Hello again. So in this video, I'm going to show off how to write and run a very simple command line shell script, which gets you a little bit into the practice of doing programming on the command line. We're going to do a little bit of this for this course to just try to get a sense for sort of how programming kind of evolves from our basic command line tool usage. So as always, I recommend that you work along with me as you're watching this video, right? Open up the programs on your own machine and try things out as you go along. You can always stop and rewind the video if you get stuck or need to try something again. The best way to learn to do something is to actually do it and try it out and experiment with it and see how well you can make these things go. All right, go there. Okay. So previously, we've shown how we can type and issue commands into the command line. This lets us tell the computer what to do, so that when we write these commands, effectively what we're doing is programming. I mean, it's really simple programming, but it is programming. We're actually we're typing out commands, and the computer understands it and does stuff. So if we want to make something more complex, right? If we want to write a more complex computer program, really that just means is that we have to figure out what commands we want to write and then write them all down and say, computer, do these things. What we really just need to do is we need to come up with an algorithm, right? This is going to be the sequence of steps that we want to perform. So as an example, here's a really basic computer program and algorithm you want to do. So maybe there's a couple of steps we want to do to have a computer program that will say, you go to the desktop and take some text and write that into a file and then show us what it is that we wrote down. Make sense? Sure, seems great. Okay, so the way we could do that, right, using commands that we know, if we want to be able to say, go to the desktop, write some content to a file, and then show us what we just wrote down, is we can use the cd command to navigate to the desktop. So I'm going to do cd ~desktop. So remember, the tilde is a shortcut for /user/class. Let's basically say, go to my home directory and then go to the desktop from there. So this will work no matter where I may happen to be. That takes me to the desktop. I can use the echo command to output some content. So maybe say, this is a message. I can be able to output that. Right, that'll echo that out. If I want to take that output and send it into a file, I can use a redirect symbol, which in this case I'm going to use 2 arrows, which is an append redirect. And that specifies that I don't want the content to go to the command line to show out for me as a user to see. I want to instead write that content into a file for me to do some stuff with. So I can have this write this into a file. So for example, I'll call the file notes.txt. So I'm saying take the message, the echo, this is a message, and output that into my note file. When I run that command, that should then take this note that creates this new file, notes.txt, that's sitting here on my desktop for me to work with. And then if I want to then be able to see the content of that file, see what's actually there, I can use another command. So for example, I can use the head command, which will be able to take a file and read the head of the file, right, the top of that file, the first couple of lines. So if I say, get me the head of notes.txt, I can see there's the message that I just wrote out. This is a message. So great, so I've got 3 commands, right, cd to desktop, echo, this is a message, and then head the notes file, which lets me do my simple program of writing down a message into a file, which is great. So now we've got our 3 commands, we've got a computer program. But really, we want this to be a program. It'd be nice if we had them all sort of written down somewhere else so that we could remember them, right? We could have them all put together into a single program, and then we could work with the abstraction of my write messages program or my take notes program without having to be able to worry about all the details on exactly what commands we were using. We can sort of take advantage of that abstraction step. So we can do that, and that process is what's called creating a shell script. That's the name of the file that we're going to write all these commands into. So this is a script in the same way that an actor follows a script for a TV show or a movie or something like that. It's a script, it's the sequence of instructions that we're going to use to control the command shell, hence shell script. So we're going to be able to write our script, and then we can tell our computer to perform that script, which we also say to run that script or to execute that script in order to make our program do its right thing. All right, so in order to write this script, we're going to need to have a program where we can actually type this stuff down into. The program that I'm going to recommend for this class is a program that is called Visual Studio Code. There's been instructions to install this inside the course text. This is a programming text editor. It's a lot like Notepad or TextEdit, but it has a bunch of extra features that are designed to help specifically with writing computer code. We're not going to use all these features. We really just want it to be because it's just kind of a nice, fast text editor, but it'll be able to work pretty well for what we're doing. Okay, So we're going to be able to write our shell script in here, which means we need to have a file we can write that in. So I'm going to, in Visual Studio Code, I'm going to go to the File menu, and I'm going to make myself a new file. This is just like how you would make a new document in Word or a new file in Excel. So it creates this new file here. I'm going to go to File and save it in order to be able to make sure I can give it a name. We'll go ahead and I'll save this in my home directory, and I'm going to call this, what do I want to call it? I wrote it down somewhere. I'm going to call it note.sh. The .sh is an extension that means shell script extension. It's the same way that things like Word documents have a .docx extension or PDFs have a PDF extension. It tells the operating system that this is going to be a file that's going to be used to run shell scripts. So I'll go ahead and I'll save that file name there. So now I've got this note.sh file, and I can start typing in commands to be able to make it to be able to tell it what to do. So I can go grab the commands that I used from my terminal, right? So the first thing I want to do is I want to tell it to change directory to the desktop. That was my first step. The next step I want to do, which I'm going to put on another line, right? So I'm going to hit enter and go down to the next line, is that I want to be able to echo, here's a message, and put that inside my notes. And then the third thing that I wanted to be able to do was I wanted to be able to use the head command and look at what the content of that notes file is, and I want to output that. So those are the three commands I want to do inside the script. If you notice this circle up here at the top, the reason it's a circle and not a little X for closing the tab is because this is a file that has got content written in it but hasn't been saved yet. So that's your unsaved file marking. You need to make sure that you save the file so that your code can actually be used by the computer and by the interpreter. So we can save the file by just doing file save, or I'm going to be using Control S for the rest of the day because that's how fast I run. So there we go. We've got our basic command script that does some work. Make sense? Good. So if we now go back to my home directory, which is where we built this thing, right? Again, there's my note.sh. It's inside the list. If I ask the head the content of note.sh, that's its content. It tells me what is actually in there. There's some extra line breaks necessary. In order to then be able to actually run this script, we need to make one more little change. So what I'm going to do one more thing first. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'll put an extra line break here just for cleanliness. I'm going to go to the top here and I'm going to add what's called a comment. So I'm going to put a pound symbol, and then I'm going to write myself a little note to myself explaining what this is. So this script writes a message to a note file. So this is a comment that is something the computer will ignore. Anything that starts with a hash symbol in front of it, the computer ignores. It basically says that's not code. I don't need to do anything with that. That's just blah. It doesn't care. But this is a way of getting us as humans a sense to be able to understand what's going on. So this is going to be useful for letting us be able to explain what happened. So I might put a little note here, for example, saying that this will always be the same message, which doesn't quite work for my notes thing, but it's a part of what we'll be able to do to start with. So we can include some comments inside of our text and our instructions. Great. So we've got our script, right? Our script with annotations explaining how our script is supposed to work. So in order to actually then run the script, we need to make one other change. We're going to need to go on a Mac and on a Linux, on WSL systems at least, and I think maybe on Windows as well. You're going to need to be able to tell the operating system that this is a file that can be executed. We can run it, right? It's not just a Word file, but it's something that is actually a program that'll do some work. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use another command line command. We're going to use a command called change mode or chmod, or chmod as it's pronounced in different ways, which is basically we're going to change the mode of this file, what kind of file it is. We're going to specify that we want to make a file executable. We're going to add execution capability, so we're going to put a +X to make it executable, right? X for executable, get it? Yeah? Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and specify what file we want to change, which is my notes.sh file. Right, now remember that's my note.sh file. Right, that's my script that I want to do. So I run that command. Again, you'll notice that there's no feedback that comes in here. It just says it does the right thing, and so we're going to sort of just assume that it works. If we use ls and we use the -l option, which is the long option, basically say, get me the list out content, but list me out a lot more details. You can see that this note.sh file now has a bunch of X's in its permission systems over the side here. So there's ways of checking to make sure we've done this right thing, though it can get a little bit funky. In any case, now we've made this thing executable, we can actually go ahead and run it. So if I take let's see what I need to do. So we're going to put the name of the file we want to run, which is note.sh, except that in order to specify that I want to actually run this as a file and I'm not trying to do anything else with it, I'm going to also put a ./ in front of the name of the file I want to run. So I'm going to tell the command line to say, go to the current folder, a dot, then in that folder, right, the current folder, go execute the node.sh file. If you don't put the // in front of it, then your command line will say, well, it will basically go to your applications folder or an applications folder, and it'll look for a note.sh file in there, but that's not where that sh file is. That sh file is in my terminal, is in my home directory, so I need to make sure that I'm saying, run the one that's inside here, don't run one that might be in this in your programs files. Great, so once we execute that file, we can hit enter, and now you'll notice that it writes, this is a message, and then it outputted, this is a message again, probably because I ran it once and I wrote a message, and then I ran it again right when I executed the script, and now there's a message again. If I use my up arrow in order to execute the third time, now there's 3 messages. Now there's 4 messages, and 5, and 6, and look, now I'm like building a whole bunch of messages, and this is great. I made myself a little like note-taking program, though it doesn't actually take any notes yet. So this is great. Like, we can keep going this for a while, right? It keeps doing this, and then you'll notice that eventually it stops growing. Ah, okay. Why is that happening? Well, if we go to the desktop, right, and I can use open to actually open up my terminal again. So if I go to my desktop and I go to my notes file, and I can open this inside of Visual Studio, drag and drop, you'll notice that there's 17 lines here, but it was only showing me the first 10 or so. That's because the head command only shows the top of the file. It's only going to list the beginning of what we wrote. So it's going to list the first 10 lines. We can customize that with different options. So for example, if I'm interested in opening and using head on notes. Where was I? Oh, it's on the desktop. So if I'm interested in opening the desktop's version of notes.txt, I can specify that I want to say show me only 5 lines, and then it'll show me only 5 lines. Or I can say that I want to show me 20 lines, and it'll show me all 20. It'll show me the first 20 lines. If we don't know how many lines we want to see, or we want to see a beginning of the parts of this, we can use a number of different other kinds of commands. So for example, we can use the, instead of using head, we can use the cat command, which is short for concatenate, which is basically saying take a bunch of files and put them together and show me the result. And we're going to put one file together and show the result of that, which will be one file. So I can show that, use cat to show the entire file. If I want to instead use the tail command, which works a lot like head, I could say, for example, show me instead of the first 5 lines, show me the last 5 lines, and then I can see the last 5 lines of my message. And if I had some way of being able to say, write down what actually message I want typed in this script, I'd be able to sort of see a bit more detail. But that involves more complex coding work that we're not going to get into right now, because that's way more than we need to do. Cool. So great. So that's the basics. I mean, that's really the basics behind computer programming, is we're going to figure out what are the commands we can write that a computer can understand, right? What's that language the computer speaks? And we're going to make sure we speak the same language. We're going to write them down in a file in order, saying do these things in this particular series of order, right? Do this stuff in this file. And then we run a command that says, hey, computer, do the stuff that I said in the file. And that's how we write computer programs. And really, all computer programs are just like that, but they just have a lot more complex set of instructions. So we're going to do more of this kind of process as we go. We're going to find ways to be able to make more interesting and more complex programs, but we're going to be doing it by using other computer languages that tend to let us write more complex things in slightly less opaque ways. And that's what the benefit of Python is going to be as we keep going.